What's up, everybody? Peter Martin here. We are so pleased today on the pod to present a discussion, a conversation, a homecoming with Mr. Victor Goines, my friend of 30-plus years, one of the finest saxophonists, educators, and administrators and cultural ambassadors of this music that we call jazz anywhere. He is the incoming president and CEO of Jazz St. Louis. We discuss that. We discuss New Orleans back in the old days. I even surprised him with a video clip that he wasn't aware of himself on YouTube with 1.5 million views. So Adam and I had a lot of fun. Let's get into our discussion with Mr. Victor Goines. What's going on, Victor? Welcome.
All right, Peter Martin.
Man, so glad to have you here. This is Victor Goines. And we are so glad to have you on the pod here. So glad to have you in St. Louis. Can we call you a resident yet? I don't want to jinx it.
Yeah, I'm buying property, so I'm a resident.
All right. We're so excited. It's a wonderful thing. You've only been here a few weeks, but you look like you're settling in. You're finding your way around. What's your initial impressions?
Well, that's an optical illusion that I'm settled down. You know, I've been here, though, for a couple of weeks now.
Okay.
My impression is that's a great city. I'm happy to be in your hometown. You spent time in mine in Crescent City. Now I'm in St. Louis with you.
That's right. We've really come full circle. And, one of the joys of my professional and personal career and how they've intersected has been our kind of almost near constant involvement, although we've taken some breaks from each other that are caused by others more than us. But, some of my happiest musical memories and, periods of intense development have been with you, because of you, and alongside you at different times. So to have you back here now makes me feel like, being in that student and development period again. So I'm really excited.
Well, I thank you for that compliment. Actually, I was the student and you all were the teachers with you and Chris Thomas and Brian Blade and Nicholas Payton. Man, I was just holding on to coattails. I was an old man in the band.
Well, it was such a cool thing. And we're going to listen. I actually pulled up a little bit of footage, but of course it's not moving because it was so long ago.
Right.
It's stationary footage. But that was such a great period. Yeah, so you had a band and you invited us all to join. Nicholas Payton on trumpet. And Nicholas was like...
He was about 14 or 15.
Oh, yeah. He was, I was going to say a kid. He was almost pre-kid. But basically sounded the same as he does today, oddly enough.
Yeah, he had a sound that was unique and he had a voice that was his at that time. And it has evolved, obviously, but it is the same voice that you can recognize over time.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Brian Blade, Chris Thomas, and myself were kind of a rhythm section that, became a little bit known after that, but really the genesis of that was with you because you're the first one that put us together. Like we were playing as a trio, but we didn't have any gigs. So you actually made us into a rhythm section because you're not really a rhythm section if you're not playing with anybody,
That was the last time any of you three had no gigs.
Right.
Right. After that, I was the one without a gig because I didn't have a rhythm section. It's funny because you all obviously, I could tell a story. I remember the exact story behind how that all evolved. We were preparing to play the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival, and George Wein he had his Young Lions out at that time. You all were going to be, I think, the second generation of the Young Lions.
Right.
And we had like the prime spot on the Jazz and Heritage Festival, and Mr. Wein wanted this band, this rhythm section of Peter, Brian, and Chris and Nicholas. So he said, well, we could change your time. I said, well, no, I don't want to change from the prime time. I said, let them make their decision. Initially, they all were like, well, we're going to stay here and make the gig. But obviously, George Wein, being who George Wein was, he added his influence to it, and they went on the road with the Young Lions. And ultimately, that rhythm section became Joshua Redman's rhythm section, which was kind of interesting because the whole time I was trying to get us on the road as a band, but all of you all ended up going out as a band, and I stayed in New Orleans. But I was happy for you all to be out there with Joshua. And Nicholas ultimately had his own band when he joined. I think he joined Verve, right?
Yeah,
his first record.
Verve, and then was playing with Elvin Jones, I think, around that time and right after that.
Right.
No, I think I smell a reunion concert at Jazz St. Louis coming on.
Well, they did that once already. The trio was in a club.
Yes.
And I was playing across the street at the Fox.
At the Powell Hall.
At Powell.
With the symphony and with Jazz and Lincoln Center.
Yeah, and our gig was kind of side by side. So as soon as we finished, I packed up real quick and ran down to the bistro.
Yep.
And they had just finished playing. So I was like, oh, man. I said, well, man, can they play another song?
Yeah.
And nobody objected, so we got to play some rhythm sections together, I remember.
Yeah.
So it was fun.
Well, because I remember we talked, and I was like, come over right when you're done. And you know how musicians are always like, oh, yeah, I'm going to come down. But I was kind of lingering on that second set because I was like, I know Victor will. Like, Victor's one of those guys that will, if he's saying he's going to come down, so I can be like, no, man, I was going to come. But
you see him the next day. It's not like that.
And so we're kind of like vamping, but it's like sort of time to go. And then I look out of the corner of my eye, I saw Victor. I was like, yep. And he had like, he was dressed, but he had his horns. I was like, exactly, let's do this, you know.
So that was the beginning of a reunion. But we have to get maybe another reunion happening somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I mean, even after we were all traveling and you were as well, you try to make it sound like we all left. You know, you were out there. But the great thing was we did a lot of playing together, of course, with Jermaine Basil as well.
That's right.
You know, who really was like a musical mother to all of us.
Yep.
But we always had that foundation in New Orleans. I mean, you had it growing up, but I felt like the warm embrace of the musical community with so many different folks, but especially with you and with Nicholas and Walter Payton and Ellis Marsalis, of course. That was a really special thing.
It was. You know, and New Orleans was very lucky for you coming to the city at that time because you filled a generational vacuum that had potentially vacated itself when Harry Connick left town. You know, you all probably close to each other in age and whatnot. So there was really no one with your level of proficiency at that age there to be able to come on the bandstand and play like you did, and very few people after that, you know, to be honest with you. But it was great to have you in town because you also brought the knowledge of Thelonious Monk with you. So I remember you had shared a lot of Monk during that time. So it was a chance for me to learn more of Thelonious Monk's music with you.
Yeah, that was fun. We used to play, I mean, you were so open, everybody was, so that we used to play all that stuff.
Can we listen to this band?
Yes, let's listen to it.
Too far into
Okay,
it?
so I pulled this up. I don't know when the last time you saw this, Victor, but I want to introduce you to your grandson, a young Victor Goines here.
Who's on my record cover?
But it's funny because you were saying you felt like the old man. We must have been like toddlers then because you look like you're about 17 years old here.
Yeah, it was another one of those makeup kind of things.
Yeah, this is cool. So this is from was it 91 or 92?
I think it's 91.
I think it's 91, yeah. Victor Goines' Genesis, the same quintet we were just talking about. This is the title track. Such a great period because now you can correct me because I know you have a great memory for these things, but didn't you have like finale printed charts for all these tunes back then?
Yeah, well, what happened is I used to write them out, but every time I come to the gig, someone would lose a part. So I finally said I have to go digital now.
Yeah.
So then I started going digital. It made life a lot easier in terms of being able to reproduce parts along the way.
But think about this, Adam. Okay, 1991. We're talking about, what is that, 41? Wait, is that right? 41 years ago? No, that couldn't be.
Oh, my goodness.
No, 31 years ago.
31.
Don't put those extra years on.
No, but I
It's
mean,
going by fast enough.
that was the first time I saw like actual digital copies that
Yeah.
somebody had printed out.
I remember the first time for me too.
Yeah,
it's
and I was
good.
like, and then I remember he was like, oh, I'm going to change this. Then he came back the next day. Of course, it would take a day, but I would have thought it would have taken 6 months to redo it, like re-engrave it. I was like, how is he doing it? Me and Brian and Chris are looking, like, this is like magic. This guy is like, how is he doing it?
Yeah.
So it was, that just came back. But so many great musical memories. We all had fun too, because we had a lot of the same sort of musical heritage, I think, like language. You know, a lot of it we sort of developed together, but we also kind of brought this sort of, vibe and sensibilities and things that we listened to, the vernacular of like how to play with each other. So it was a real natural thing.
Yeah, we would listen to a lot of, I know I was at the time listening to a lot of Wynton and his by then it was starting to be his sextet, but I had listened to a lot of, he and Branford, of course, having come up together. So it's funny because when I listen to this now, and I haven't listened to this in a very long time, but I thought I was writing in 7/4, but it's just 4 + 3, 4 + 3. And I didn't realize it was so symmetrical along the way till I was listening. I was like, wow, it's just very symmetrical. So,
Yeah.
But it was really interesting to be able to really share it with you all, because I remember I lived on Music Street, ironically, in New Orleans, and I had a back room where I made sure I had a drum set. We had an electric piano.
Yeah.
Didn't own an upright at the time, but we were able to get back there and share it and have jam sessions and whatnot. So it was a really, really special time. It was really a point that need to be reproduced in modern times, where people come together and it's not always about what money am I going to make on one gig or on this gig or that gig. You just constantly involved in the music, and that's what New Orleans was about at that time.
Yeah, we were like hustling, but it wasn't really hustling. It was hustling to like rehearse and play and get arrangements together and learn monk tunes and stuff.
Right.
But we were always like, we go to Victor's house. We're like, man, this dude, he owns, like, he was always a little step ahead of us. He owned the house. We were like, can I get a roommate? Do I have to sleep over here? You know, Brian would be like, oh, I can't stay in my apartment anymore. Can I stay with yours?
Yeah.
I was like, this dude owns a house, man. He's next level.
It's amazing how old the 26-year-old seems to a 21-year-old.
Exactly.
Well, it's funny. I remember there was a time Brian had a gig one day, and he lived in the uptown area of New Orleans. He went up, he loaded his truck, he said. He went upstairs to get one thing he forgot, came back down, his drum set was gone.
Oh, yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah, because he lived in the hood part of Uptown.
Oh, right.
In the central city over there.
Exactly. But he called me, he said, hey man, somebody stole my drum set. Can I borrow yours? I said, yeah. So he ended up playing this big 22-inch bass drum for a lot of gigs. But it served a purpose, and I was happy he was able to do it.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I want to have you back because we're going to do like 17 different. We're going to do a whole series of podcast episodes just talking about the New Orleans days.
I want to get some playing going in
We've
here,
definitely
too, at
got
some
it.
point.
Yeah, we've definitely got it in there. But we wanted just to talk to you about your new position. You are CEO, executive director, head honcho, big man in charge. What other titles are out there for Jazz St. Louis?
Yeah, it's a huge point of pride for our city, Jazz St. Louis. As you know now, I'm sure you've been here for long enough, which is not long, but long enough for everybody to tell you how much they love the institution, you know. And I wonder what it's like coming into this institution. Your predecessor was here for quite a while.
Yeah.
And
Well, it's really unique for me because I remember when it was just jazz.
Yeah, sure.
At the Majestic Hotel.
Oh, right.
Absolutely, yeah.
And everybody played where the pool table is at,
Yeah.
in the corner of the joint, but some of the best music that one ever. I remember checking out Tim Warfield with Nicholas Payton there one time. And then obviously it moved down on Washington Street where it became known as Jazz at the Bistro.
Yep.
And the bandstand was way in the front and everybody was in the back. And the back left, of course, was kind of like the musician's corner where people could kind of sneak in the back door. There's no one sneaking in, y'all, so I'm watching you. And then I was fortunate to be a part of the renovation process when Jazz at Lincoln Center played for the grand opening. So, and I think it's one of the most beautiful rooms in the country to be. I think it's the pride and joy of St. Louis, and it's affiliated with the only jazz institution downtown in jazz, in St. Louis.
Yeah,
I mean, you have the orchestra here, St. Louis Symphony Orchestra, you have the opera and all this, then you have Jazz St. Louis. So we represent, this is what we would call St. Louis for the Performing Arts, sort of at Grand Center. And I'm kind of using the name of Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts, where they have all of their institutions in one location. Well, this is where all the institutions are located for the performing arts in St. Louis. Not to overlook what's taking place in Forest Park with all the museums and everything else. There's a tremendous amount of art and the arts in St. Louis, as everyone has been really, really kind enough to tell me, especially for the population of the city compared to others. I mean, New York is a huge population, and while it has a lot going on, per capita, St. Louis, I think, outdoes New York easily.
Well, we always mention, in New York Times jazz critic Nate Shenin wrote a book called Playing Changes about jazz in the 21st century, and he lists 3 major jazz institutions, Jazz at Lincoln Center, SF Jazz, and Jazz St. Louis.
Fantastic.
And I always say, that's amazing for a city our size to even be mentioned in the same breath as those other 2 is incredible. But it does speak to what I love about Jazz St. Louis is just the amount of respect that it gives the music that we all, of course, think it deserves. But it's pretty, when you set the table that way, when you set the scene for your community, they show up and the musicians show up, and it's pretty incredible. So.
And the history is so deep here, when I first took the job, I did some research to see about people who were from here. And I'm not going to remember all the names now, but of course, everybody associates Miles Davis here. He was actually from Alton, Illinois,
Yeah.
which is part of St. Louis. People claim it as. But someone who was definitely from here, phenomenal, was Clark Terry.
Yeah.
We need a Clark Terry statue in Grand Center.
Yeah.
Right away.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely. And then Velma Middleton from Louis Armstrong's band.
Yep.
That's an interesting thing. And then there's a whole popular music scene and hip hop and all of that other kind of stuff. There's artists from all different genres and who are from St. Louis. So, I mean, it makes sense that it's organized from there. And it kind of puts us in a, and I say us, I'm talking about New Orleans. It makes us realize we need to have something that's competitive and even not competitive, but representative maybe is a better word,
Yeah.
as the other three major arts institutions that you mentioned are.
It's the home. It deserves a
So-
home base for
Well,
sure.
I love the concept of a little bit of like healthy competition and helping each other. And I think that, you're going to be, and you already are, such a great asset to us here in St. Louis, not just for Jazz St. Louis, but for the greater arts community, because you're so well versed with these other institutions. And like with New Orleans, really with that very unique thing there, but also your long time connection with Jazz and Lincoln Center from the very beginning, back before, when it was still at Alice Tully and everything.
Oh,
back
yeah.
in those days, I was around a little bit then, but I mean, so you saw that grow, but also SF Jazz, you've played here, you played on the very first concert,
Right.
Well, you
as
can
a
play.
musician.
That alone
Yeah,
is a
exactly.
huge sigh of relief.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also, as being the first director at the Juilliard Jazz program,
Yeah.
so the education side, I think that you bring a unique perspective and intelligence about the music from both sides, institutional and as a musician, that is really going to be able to propel this situation to the next level. So I'm super excited to see
Well,
where it goes.
I'm looking forward to it. I have to tell you, of all the things that were descriptions inside of it, I was really excited to see so much of an educational component inside of Jazz St. Louis. And I mean, they were very adamant about wanting somebody with an educational background of a extended period of time. I think at least 8 years is what I remember seeing on the job description.
Right.
But that's not something that usually is a priority for a job requirement at an arts institution.
Right.
It might be other things, along the way, especially in this position of president and CEO.
Yep.
But I was excited to see that, and I happen to know a lot about education, so I've been in it a while.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's such a great foundation and a track record.
Yeah.
And we've all been, and Caleb is involved currently on the faculty, on the education side, and we've done many things, and I've been advisor there. But there's a real track record, not only with standout players, like a Nathan Pence, and
Jacob Mosher.
Jacob Melsha and Scooter Brown, and really good players that came up in the Jazz U program, but also just really excited, well-rounded, culturally diverse students of the music. They may not go on, to jazz superstardom, but they have an appreciation for the music. They're going to go on to be directors or band directors, or have nothing to do with jazz, but still be connected with it. And in a city that has traditionally been one of the most segregated cities in the country, and doesn't have some of the advantages in New Orleans, where there's sort of that cross-pollination that's built in, although, as we know, New Orleans has its own problems too.
Right.
But in St. Louis, Jazz St. Louis and the Jazz U program in particular, I felt has done a great job of bringing together students from East St. Louis, from U City, from West County, from all these different places under the auspices of not competing, because kids will get together in a football game in an adversarial standpoint. But how many situations are there from kids from actual different socioeconomic backgrounds in different parts of the city come together to make music, to learn about music? It's a really special
What
thing.
about our shared cultural heritage here? As you
Right.
mentioned the history and the musicians who are from here. It's great that kids who are from here get to learn about the musicians that are from here. It's amazing.
Yeah, and the one thing for me coming in is I'm not trying to change, and I'm not going to change anything in the beginning of this, to be honest with you. I want to hear what's already here, because I know that to survive for 26, 27 years, that's a pretty good foundation. There was something in place already. So the question now is, what exists to date that allows me to build upon it? It's like having a good 5-story house that you decide you want to make 10-story, or even a high-rise for that matter. You review what's already here, and then you see how you strengthen the foundation so that you can build it upward. And that's really what I'm trying to learn now. I'm in a study mode, more or less, not only about the position, but the community, and walking around and kind of talking to people as they're willing to have a dialogue and learn about the city and learn about downtown, learn about all the things that are here, the great things and the challenging things, because those become energetic things that make things go round, so to speak.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what? How do you see the future of as you're learning about kind of where it's come from, but kind of knowing where it is? What do you see? Have you had enough time to kind of see a vision in terms of like where you see this going? Are you modeling that off of your experiences with Jazz and Lincoln Center? Like, how does all that go into your thinking about what's happening here?
Well, I certainly want to utilize the experiences that I've taken from Jazz at Lincoln Center, but I'm in no way trying to parallel it to make it a Jazz at Lincoln Center, because it's St. Louis, it's Jazz St. Louis. It has its own identity. It's just like somebody said, well, we could do a New Orleans show. I said, but we could do a St. Louis show. We don't have to do a New Orleans show, we could do a St. Louis show. So I want to take those things that I've learned. But I remember one of the key questions that somebody asked me from the search firm, as I was considering this whole process, the gentleman said, Jazz St. Louis is known around the world, but it's not world renowned. So I'd like to work on exploring and putting into motion how we can make Jazz St. Louis world renowned. Now I have some ideas that I can't necessarily put out there quite yet, because
Can we get a scoop here?
Because they take money. And so for our first listener who contributes to our
we got rich listeners. Come on, you give us a scoop.
So if you put, but we have some ideas about what we can do, because what we got to do is try to get the news outside of this area. I mean, and many people I've spoken to thought that sometimes St. Louis is more of an insular type of town. It kind of keeps its riches inside of it. And the thing I think is a little bit of a challenge is that we have all these great artists come here. Regina Carter was there.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the season, we have Stephon Harris going to be in town, Etienne Charles. We have Sean Jones coming in. We had Joey coming in. Unfortunately, he passed away, Joey DeFrancesco. Yeah. But all of these great artists coming in town, that's a great thing. They're bringing the riches from other parts of the country in town. But then they're just kind of also taking our riches and leaving. So we have to find a way for us to go out and get the riches of the world and bring them back in. And I'll leave you with that much of a hint about what I want to do to kind of help us move to the next level.
Yeah. No, it's super interesting, because, we're always thinking about, when you're, like I think that you bring such a fresh perspective, especially now while you're fresh in here. Like, once you've been here for a while, it's going to be harder for you. You're going to be one of us, which is great. But it's like now you can see you've been in all these situations. I mean, I think about, like, you've come and played with the St. Louis Symphony, so you bring that element, but you've worked with, like, the Berlin Philharmonic on extended projects and all these different things. And so, like, you bring that sort of global perspective that I think is needed here. And, like, we think about, like, St. Louis. You're right, it can be insular, but, like, the St. Louis Cardinals aren't insular. They're not like, we're not world class or world renowned. Yeah. No, we're going for the top.
Yeah,
we're going to bring in, or if they're from here, whatever, we're going to bring it together. But I'm wondering, well, our mutual friend Sam Burko, who the three institutions we talked about, SF Jazz, Jazz and Lincoln Center, Rose Hall, and Jazz St. Louis, he was the acoustics designer at all those, and we also brought him in for this space.
Fantastic.
For some of those same reasons. But I remember him taking me to the side and said, Peter, he's like, what you guys have here in St. Louis is such a unique and special thing. He's like, why I came here? I was like, well, because we've kind of been friends, and I asked him, he's like, yeah, well, I got a lot of projects I'm working on. But he said, I really believe, especially in this Grand Center area between Jazz St. Louis, the Symphony, here, what we're trying to do. And so I think for us to be able to leverage that kind of world-class talent and bring it in is a great thing and a great reminder to us that what we have is something, really special here.
Right. And this has been great. As I've gotten to town, so many people have reached out to introduce themselves to me, presidents of different organizations, CEO positions, artistic directors from St. Louis Symphony, St. Louis Opera, the Kranzberg, everybody. So I'm looking forward to meeting more and more of them, but I'm looking forward to see how we can also collaborate, because we should collaborate outside of St. Louis, but we can collaborate inside of St. Louis.
That's great. That's great.
We can maximize what we have here and put our audiences together.
Right.
Again, we're not competing against each other. We're actually all on the same team, because while each organization might have their part of the pie that's big in terms of the population of people in St. Louis, we're small, so we have to be together. We have to be working together all the time.
Yeah. when I think some, you know, we've seen some things that I think we need to do a better job, and we'll definitely do it here on the pod and, you know, in trumpeting, if you will, or saxophoning in honor of our guest.
There you go.
But, you know, examples that have been really successful, you know, Jazz St. Louis and Opera Theater of St. Louis.
Terrence Blanchard.
With Terrence, his first, well, two of the
He's got
first
two.
opera,
Yeah.
like that wouldn't have probably happened.
Both commissioned
had
here.
somebody not
Yeah.
stepped up.
Yeah.
And you could say, well, somebody else would have done it, but it's like, but we're the ones who did it
That's right.
actually.
That's right.
And so, and then it goes to the Met, and everybody talks about that, but that was born right here.
That's right.
And so there's definitely the talent here, and there's the opportunities. So it's gonna be fun to see where you
Yeah.
take it.
We'll try to come up with some transformational ideas, as they say,
Yeah.
that'll help to expand the perspective of St. Louis and Jazz St. Louis inside the U.S., but also around the world. I think it should be world renowned, just like Jazz at Lincoln Center has, and Winton
Yeah.
has done a magnificent job of making Jazz at Lincoln Center a world renowned place.
Yep.
SF Jazz has done the same thing. Now we have to make sure that we at St. Louis, and that takes all of us, it's not just those inside of Jazz St. Louis, but the entire community, do what we can to elevate Jazz St. Louis, because, as they say, a rising tide raises all ships. So we want to make sure that everybody is rising at the same time. And we want to make sure that the local musicians, which is a term that I hate, there's a better term that we can use. Those who, how did Bob decide to use it? But those who live here as
Right.
opposed to those who reside here, because local for some people brings upon a negative output in other ways.
Right.
You know, but people who have that world experience in bringing it back, it's important that they get to put that on display in St. Louis as well. I mean,
Well, it's like in New York. Nobody minds being called a local
Yeah,
musician
yeah,
in
yeah.
New York.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, you're a local Broadway musician. You're
Right,
a local
right.
Lincoln Center musician.
Right.
Yeah. Well, that's great. All right, so we're gonna go take a sharp left turn.
Oh,
if it's okay,
boy.
'cause I got a little
Okay.
surprise for you.
okay, here we
We've
go.
known each other for a while. I got to dig deep to find surprises.
Okay,
you know?
all right, go for it.
Okay.
Caleb,
so,
you got the kill switch ready to go? Okay.
Okay, so this is something that I remember seeing, and I think I texted you about this, so it might not be a
Uh-oh.
total surprise. And I know you have an incredible memory, but are you familiar with this video? I'm just gonna play it for you. I mean, of course you're familiar
Oh,
because you
my.
were there, but
07. Oh, man.
L'improvisation is the melody. La première chose pour l'improvisation, c'est la mélodie. So we take always
Obviously-
I play this song.
you probably didn't think you were being filmed at this point.
Got that right.
I love your look. It's kind of like, am I just gonna be sitting here? Am I gonna play it? I don't. Is it time for lunch? What's happening?
So you see, I start with the song.
Donc, vous avez entendu, il commence avec la chanson, avec la mélodie.
You heard this song before?
Is that 1.5 million?
Cette chanson?
Yeah. Well, this
Yeah.
is what I was gonna say. Okay, so this is one of the most viewed jazz videos.
Happy birthday?
Yes, happy birthday, Wynton Marsalis. And look, I got to fast forward to
Oh,
this.
boy,
Here,
oh, boy.
Victor. Okay, so obviously it's killing. Like the time is there, the intonation. Wynton's playing. You play some nice improv after this, but it's also the kind of thing like anytime you get up to play, you're gonna play at this level. But for whatever reason, this has a 1.5 million views. So my question is, first of all, did you know that? And do you have an explanation for that?
It has 1.5 million views because this probably was the last time you saw me in jeans and a t-shirt. You're right. I didn't know it was going to be, well, I wasn't even supposed to do anything with him. I used to always go and check out his workshops.
Right.
So while I was there, he said, hey, you want to play? I said, sure, I'll play. So I'm sitting down lounging. And even as we were doing it, I didn't see the camera.
Right.
So, but we just happened to be doing it. And, he asked me to be a part of it. So I was there. But 1.5 million, I had no idea it had that many hits.
Well, let me
in this
just jump
time.
ahead because it's really killing what you guys are doing. I didn't mean to minimize it by saying I've heard you guys do this all the time, but that's more of a testament to just you stay at a high level. But I want to. So it's not just your regular happy birthday. Yeah. But it's like, man, for a little side note for students out there, anybody who wants to learn about time, check out Victor Goines' left foot. That's that's like a master class in how to just keep perfect, relaxed time with your Reeboks there. You know,
Well, you know, that comes from Tony Williams. You know, he used to always play his hi-hat on every beat, and he would shift from left to right. I remember watching VSOP when Whitney and Branford were in the band.
Yeah. So, okay, now since you didn't know about that, you probably don't know about this.
Oh boy, oh
Did
boy.
I dress any better?
Well, check this out. This video only has 400,000 views, but it's called this. I don't know if you know Rick Beato, but he's one of the really. I mean, he's got 3 million subscribers. He's a big. He's not like jazz. He's just a music YouTuber. You know, talking about music. And this is what he says is the greatest.
Hey everybody, I'm Rick Beato. So a lot of people ask me, what kind of videos are your favorite YouTube videos to watch? Or even more oftenly asked, what's your favorite music YouTube video? And I thought, oh, that's easy. It's actually a video that my friend Pat sent to me on my birthday years ago. And it was a video that got uploaded to YouTube way back in 2008. It's from 2007.
Way back.
You see
And
what
it's just 2 people playing. But no question, every time I put this on, it puts me in a great mood. And I don't typically like happy music. I like really moody, music that's intense. But this is very happy music. Matter of fact, the title of this song starts with the word happy. So let me set up this video. There are 2 players, just a trumpet player and a saxophone player. And they're
This side note, I love how he acts like you guys choreograph. I love how you're telling the story. Like, well, I just happened to be.
I know.
Like, let me set the tone.
Right.
It was a movie
playing a
set.
song that you all know. This video was recorded in 2007, put on YouTube 2008. Check it out.
La mélodie.
You've heard this song before?
Vous l'avez déjà entendu cette chanson?
This is Wynton Marsalis on the
Now,
trumpet
Victor's going to play the melody.
and
of
Victor
this song,
Goines
and
on the
I'm going to play
saxophone.
an improvisation around.
Victor's going to play the
Donc,
melody,
Victor
he's going to
va jouer
improvise
la
around it.
mélodie.
It starts on B flat.
Oh, that's what was missing.
Yeah, he was missing guitar.
The internet is a fun
And I
place.
definitely didn't know about that one.
It's
That's
a
what I was
silly
thinking.
place, the internet. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you weren't thinking about the changes in the same way he's laying them out either. So.
Could you imagine showing your 2007 self this whole phenomenon?
Wow.
You know?
But I think it is like, this.
And then now there's going to be this video of that
yeah,
video.
like we're
and
analyzing, and then we're getting your reaction
Well,
to someone else
We
reacting.
call that Pascal's triangle
That's
in
right.
mathematics.
10 years from now, we're going to have to Caleb's going to make a video of this video.
Yeah. All right, well, cool. Well, I got to surprise you a little bit.
was
Yeah,
didn't
wow, you
really-
did.
Like, you weren't jumping out of your seat. You were still relaxed about it. So, well, Victor, thank you so much for
Yeah,
being
man.
here. And again, welcome to St. Louis. And I couldn't be happier. We couldn't be happier that you're part of the St. Louis musical family. You already were part of the St. Louis musical family.
Yeah, we had spent enough time here to be maybe a little bit, but now, I'm a little bit more than my colleagues when they come in.
That's
We'll
right.
have to have some great St. Louis food for them when they come in town. No New Orleans food. We've done gumbo everywhere else. But we'll do some barbecue and some other things, some fried raviolis, them too, right?
Toasted ravioli. You're trying to get to fry them up, right?
Yeah,
That's
some
right.
things like that for when they come in town. But
Yeah.
it's great to be here. Thanks for the welcome, and thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right.